Welcome to Getting Down to Business. I'm Ashley Curtis, Career Counselor and Internship Coordinator with the Muma College of Business.
And I'm Jill Brown, Career and Academic Advisor. And we are your hosts for this career podcast, bringing and connecting students to industry information, leadership opportunities, and hopefully discovering what makes USF unique.
Yep. Today I am so excited because we have two of the most energetic and passionate CEO and COO of Henley Car Wash with us. We have Greg Floyd and Bill Burkins. So Greg, Bill, I will let you introduce yourselves.
All right, Greg Floyd. I'm the CEO of Henley Car Wash and excited to be here. This will be fun.
I'm Bill Burkins. I'm the CEO of Henley Car Wash, otherwise known as AquaSonic Car Wash.
Oh,
that'll be our retail name.
Well, thank you both so much for being here today. As we get started, want to ask you both, Bill, I'll start with you. Do you have a favorite quote or a mantra that inspires you when you wake up in the morning?
Well, I have a couple.
Ooh, okay.
You know, and the first two come from my father.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was a pretty big senior executive in a major company, and I said, Dad, so graduating college, what advice would you give me? He goes, two things. One, treat every day like it's the Super Bowl.
Ooh.
So if you're playing the Super
Right.
Bowl,
Yeah.
you're going to be ready for that, right?
Be ready.
And then number two, he goes, think big. Most people don't think big and think big. And then that's kind of personal. I grew up that way.
Yeah.
And then, I started my career out at General Electric, and I worked 16 years there. The entire time, Jack Welch was the CEO, who at one time grew GE to be the largest company in the world. And he was a tough guy, but he said something that stuck with me. And he goes, great leaders always have a generosity gene.
Oh,
I like that.
yeah.
It's great. Wow. It's hard to follow, but I'll
I was going to
try.
say, do you want to pass now?
Yeah, exactly. I would group mine into two different things. One is thinking, in other words, tenacity. So the thinking quote is Henry Ford, and it's one that I know gets used a lot, but I'll use it again, is either, whether you're right or wrong, you're probably correct, which means like, are you trying, are you thinking positively, and I think sometimes you can almost psych yourself out on doing something before you even start. And so I think that positive mindset is really important. So the great thinkers just are able to do that. And then I think tenacity, and I think it's because it's maybe the All-Star game yesterday or whatever, but as you think about the baseball player Babe Ruth, he talked about it's really hard to beat someone who never gives up. And I think tenacity is probably one of the biggest traits that I've learned from leaders and people that I've worked with, is that just never give up and always try your best.
I'm going to probably have to steal some of these things and put them on my wall because I like the Super Bowl idea.
And I hope our students do too.
Always being ready for game day.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Big game.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we're going to move into another little game of word association. So we'll alternate between, and if you'll just say the first thing that pops into your head.
Okay.
We're going to start with experience.
There's good experience and there's bad experience. Focus on the good.
All right.
Good.
Culture.
Culture is everything, but it's really about, I would say, the undercurrent of your business and really who you are. It's your foundation.
Can I jump in on that one?
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I took this job, where I get to create a company, basically starting up from scratch, is I've worked at a lot of companies with a lot of different cultures. This is going to be one where I get to be the major impact of the culture.
Right.
So I can really shape the way people think. And I mean, culture really, if you do it right, things will just happen naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But you got to have the right culture. I
Yeah.
believe in it 100%.
Yeah.
And we'll get more into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree. Culture is really important.
As you can tell, we're both very passionate about culture. It's a big deal.
Growth.
Can't go anywhere without it.
Success.
Success is measured, I think, both personally and professionally. But if we're just taking from a professional standpoint, I think it's, to me, I want to know what lives I influence. So does someone leave working with me as a better person than when they came to me in the first place? That, to me, is success. That's how I measure it.
Yeah. I find myself in that boat too. When a student succeeds and then I'm like, oh,
Yeah, that's more successful
Yes,
than anything
we
I
worked.
could get.
did it.
For sure.
Okay.
Well, thank you for playing. Now, let's get down to business. So our listeners can probably sense some good camaraderie between both Bill and Greg. Why don't you tell us a little bit how the two of you met and your journey to Henley Car Wash?
Sure. You want me to start to how you interviewed me? You want to do that, or do you want to go
Well,
ahead?
I'll tell you how I interviewed Greg. I get a stack of resumes all the time. I was running 1,100 H&R Block locations across the Southeast, and I get resumes all the time. And I like to look through them, see what's out there. And I got his. I'm like, let's see if we can get this guy for an interview. I didn't have a job. I did not have a job for him. No place, no home. I wanted to see what happened. And Greg comes in more prepared than probably anybody I've ever interviewed in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he had a 15-page PowerPoint presentation. He knew more about our industry than most of my peers working in my company knew about the industry. And I said, I'm going to offer this guy a job, and I'll figure out what to do with him. If he says yes.
Yeah, because I was interested in there was a marketing role that Bill had that he just filled earlier, and so he says, "Hey, I filled it, but hey, let's just keep talking." So as he said, he wanted to talk to me. So when I talked to him, I said, "What would I do if I was in this role? Like, I'd at least like to present to you in terms of." And so I remember he sat back and he said, "What do you think about business development?" And I go, "Okay, sure. I don't know what that means, but let's talk about it." And the rest is history. I mean, that was back in 2006. We did some phenomenal things together. We went kind of our separate ways, but he's always been a mentor of mine. Bill is someone that I trust with my life, period. I mean, if he gives me advice, like one of the things he told me years ago, this is on a personal letter, he says, you can never save enough when you're younger because of compound interest and all that. But when you're younger, you're like, you're not thinking about any of that crap. I'm so glad I listened to his advice, that I just had more deducted, just little things like that. But he continues to tell me, but we would always talk. And so when this opportunity came around, it just was a perfect meeting of the mind. So, and then he can talk about how Henley got started. But, I think it was a good partnership from the beginning, and it's looking forward to the future too.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you want to tell us how Henley got started?
Well, yeah, but on Greg, I tried to hire Greg multiple times for other companies, and I just couldn't make it work at the time to get him in. And I always said, he's the guy we need to have. But Henley got started. I left my last company called TBC Corporation, where I was running the Midas and Big O Tires franchises. So about 1,700 locations across the country. And I was essentially probably going to retire and just be done working. And I get a call from a friend of mine who owns 100 Midas stores. And he goes, "Hey, Bill, I got this guy you need to talk to. He's wanting to open up 100 car washes across the United States. He's a pretty interesting guy. Can you at least meet with him for half an hour?" So I did, and I didn't know anything about the car wash business. In fact, I washed my car in the driveway. And I did because I was worried about these crappy car washes damaging my car,
Right.
and I'm cheap. I didn't want to do that. And so when I learned about the industry, I'm like, I became fascinated with it, with what's happening. It's one of the true few growing industries in retail that are out there today. The car wash industry, real simple. It's become much cheaper. The quality of your car wash has gone up. You get a showroom finish when you're out of a 90-second car wash. Your car.
You're talking me into it because I'm like you. I do it at home.
Yeah, no. And the thing is, we recycle all of the water.
Okay.
Or I should say 80 to 90% of the water
right.
we recycle. All the chemicals we use are
Nice.
environmentally friendly.
Especially for Florida.
And we'll wash your car with 19 gallons of fresh water. When you wash it your driveway, you're going to use 140 gallons. And then all your chemicals that you use to wash your car are going to go right out in the street, in the sewer, and into the bay.
Into the ocean.
Where ours, any chemicals that are left over that we can't recycle process go into the sewer system.
Yeah.
We're in the early stages. It's mostly mom and pop industry. There's 13,000 car wash tunnels out there. The industry is projected to go to 45,000 over the next 10 years. So we're in a good space in a growing industry, but the technology that's in there, from the point of sale systems to the chemicals that we're using, to the equipment that we use to actually touch your car, it's just phenomenal.
And I'd like to maybe jump in that sense to say, or ask, how can our students fit in? How can our students help? What are you looking, from our business program?
Let me turn it over to Greg.
All right.
So I could talk all day long.
Yeah, I know. That is true, and he will. So a couple of things. I think one is we have some active internships that are available, obviously at a very that's at the micro. But I think at the macro level, I would encourage any interns or anybody to really just analyze the flow of, I think where the car wash business can really help students is to understand how the process goes with a car wash too. I would really encourage them to wash their car. I think appearance is really important, especially for those that are going on dates, et cetera. It's, dude, clean your cars, please. Make sure you have a good first impression. I think it's just really important. It also brings you confidence, which I think is beyond what's good for students. But I think the big thing that I think Henley or AquaSonic can assist here is Bill brought up a lot of great things of why he's here, but why I'm here is because of leadership development.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I think about the two things, and I've read a lot about this and talked to a lot of business owners that say there's two top soft skills that are lacking, or at least not as up to par as what we'd hope, that we'd almost have to teach them. One is communication. When they leave us, they're going to be able to not only communicate via email and social, but they're also going to be able to communicate in a meeting. Like we just had a meeting today with a project manager that we've hired, that she got to hear about the equipment process and how to negotiate that, et cetera. We just talked about doing a purchase service agreement with a land site that we're interested in doing. So getting those opportunities to communicate with vendors and with people around you and all that is just immensely important. And then I think the second piece that I noticed is something we can help with is time management. Time management is not just about being on time. That's very important, first of all. I come from the adage, so does Bill, on time is late. I mean, that's just the old Vince Lombardi quote. It's very true. I just feel it's just an appropriate, but even a rude thing to do, in my opinion. It's someone else's time that you're taking advantage of. And so I think having either a job with us or anywhere else, I think being on time is one of the most important traits you can do. But that's not just that, but time management of, you're going to have a day where you're going to have 100 priorities. And what do you do to iron it out? Just know there's only 8 hours in this day. What's the most important things? How do I effectively get them all done? And how do I communicate with my leader on which ones make the most sense to get done? Those are all things that Henley and AquaSonic can help you. But I think overall, when you're looking for an internship or looking just for experience in general, those two things, you will literally be prepared to do anything you want in your lifetime.
I'll expand a little bit on it too.
Sure.
We're a startup.
Right.
But
I was going to.
We're a startup that is going to build 100 to 150 retail locations at an average cost of $7 million a piece. Okay. We have 4 employees right now, me being one of them, and being another. We have 2 others. We will have, in 4 years from now, we'll have 50 employees at our corporate office here in St. Petersburg, but we'll have close to 11 or 1,200 employees throughout our system of car washes. Yeah. And, if you think about it, that entails so many different disciplines. You need to know human resources. You need to be able to know design, work with architects. You need to be able to negotiate contracts. Yeah. You need to lead people, which I think is a really, really big thing. And I'll tell you, one of the things I learned early on at GE is if you don't have a competitive advantage, don't compete, right? And the thing is, anybody can buy the same equipment that we have. Anybody can spend $7 million building a car wash and building a great car wash. But the differentiator is going to be the people and the leadership. And what I've learned over the years is that my leaders, my store managers, whoever's running that business, they are the kings and queens of our business. They are going to be some of the most highly paid people. And we're not just going to pay them tons of money. They're going to get paid on results. And I know this, when you hire great talent and you give them and you back them with a really good compensation plan, you almost don't have to manage them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big difference. We have so many different opportunities that we're going to have over the next bunch of years as we build this business. So as a student here, tremendous different internships that we'll have along the way as we grow and expand. I mean, I can see
and jobs and all that. I mean, I think this too, and just full circle, I never thought, when I worked for Bill as business development, I never thought in a million years I'd be a CEO of a car wash company, right? But with that opportunity, I stemmed into so many different things. And so I just think as an intern or even as a job, doesn't matter of anybody, just take as much experience as you can, just understand it. Pay is important. I'm not denying that, it's really important, but really it's about what experiences can you pull from to have it almost think about it as like your own personal brand, war chest that you continue to fill. Get to learn something you don't know, like get to know marketing, get to know finance, get to know HR, because you start to get a passion toward what makes you have fun, because what Bill said is right. Like if you're not having fun, don't do it. So if you know, for example, that IT is not fun to you, then don't do it. But learn about it before you can make that assessment. Or maybe it's HR, maybe it's finance, maybe it's marketing.
Yep.
So I just think those experiences can allow you to really have different aspects of that.
And that's why internships are so important. So Greg, as we talk about internships, and we've started talking a little bit about internships that Henley has already, but what are things that students can be thinking about that you think would help them thrive in an internship?
Yeah, great point. So think a lot of times as interns or even employees in general, they think about it in terms of what do I get out of it? So the questions they'll ask will be, what type of vacation do I get? Can I work from home? What's the schedule look like? What's the pay look like? All valid questions. There's nothing against those questions, but also put yourself in the employer's shoes. What value can I bring to them? So think about it from a return on investment. So let's just say, for example, they're paying you, doesn't matter, I'll use a low number, $1,000 for that week to say, hey, you're going to work for us for a week for that $1,000. What am I getting? If I write that check for $1,000, what am I actually getting as an employer? So I think it's having that reverse mindset. So when you're going to approach that internship or that employment, really think about from the employer side is, here's the value I'm going to bring. So let's just say it's an accounting role. Hey, I've worked in these classes that have prepared me for accounting. I can do X, Y, and Z. I can save up to 30% of the time that I can from some of these other things. If you do it on the programming,
right.
I can really maximize this for you. Allow me to give me a chance, and I can really work that out for you. Here's a couple of things that I printed out for you to show you that what I've done in the past. So it's kind of being in that almost sell mode that you're gonna have to sell yourself and have that ability to make sure they know what return on investment, because that really is what it comes down to. They want to invest in you, but they also want to know what that return on investment is going to be. And so I think the best interns to have that grasp, that understands that, really starts off on the right foot and then really helps to continue to build their repertoire up.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, on that same line, then once the student lands the internship or is working for you, what's going to make them stand out?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, there's a couple of things. One, we talked about tenacity.
Right.
I want to see, sometimes I used to do a case study interview. And what I would do is I would give them a topic I knew they had no idea about, zero. Like I knew that they had no idea about, but that wasn't the point.
Right.
I didn't care if they knew or didn't know. What I wanted to see is how they would kind of interact with that situation. Would they just clam up? Would they be like, I don't know, so that's it? Would they try different things? Even if they failed, who cares?
Right.
They just tried a lot of different things. So I think for me, it's having someone stands out is never giving up. I know we talked about that quote earlier, but just never giving up, trying new things. What type of growth have they seen along the way? Doing those extra things do matter.
Yeah.
So don't just, for example, I think the great employees go from a reactive to a proactive emotion.
Yes.
And so when your reaction, you're just saying, hey, Bill, give me some duties to do, and I'll just do them. I'll check the box. Hey, Bill told me to do X, Y, and Z. Hopefully the reason that he likes me is I go to him and say, hey, I know you gave me X, Y, and Z, but I'm thinking A, B, C, D, E, F. What do you think about that? And I'm going to take my gumption to do maybe some of these to try them and tell me if that's right or wrong. Of course, get guidance from your leaders. But to me, the proactive part is so important because we have employees that we've had over the years that just can't quite get over that hump. Yeah. And so I think that's where you can differentiate yourself. You're proactive and you show that return on investment, man. I mean, I'll stick with you forever. I mean, you could figure out whatever avenue you take in business.
And that's just showing a general interest in what you're doing and a passion, just like what you're exemplifying already.
Yeah.
So they're going to see that.
And doing the research, right?
Yeah.
So like before you're meeting with a company, take the time to research and learn about them and figure out, what it is that I could come in and actually say, here are potential opportunities. And then when you're in a job, be able to say, where can we fill in these gaps and how can we find solutions to some of the problems and challenges that we're having?
Uncle would get on me on this. He goes, back when I had to do this for jobs, I had to go to the library and rent a book out and talk to people. It took me sometimes days to research for an interview. Now you literally have the computer. You can do it in 10 minutes. There's a massive amount that you can understand.
I get so crazy when I'm like it's going to take you 15 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, you're
And
not
look
talking about a
past the
huge
mission
time.
vision page.
For sure.
Go into some detail.
Yeah.
Look at some things. Figure out where they're located. Where's the
Like
home,
when
you know?
Bill and I got the car wash,
I'll
like,
tell you, go try their products, right?
Yes.
You know, like
even better.
you know,
yes.
you don't know how many people I've interviewed over
Yes.
the years for retail jobs. I'm like, hey, have you been in a Midas store lately? Oh no.
Never been to one.
Have you been to H&R Block? No.
Right.
And then
It's
that
like
I can
a
understand
secret
because
shopper
H&R Block's only open 105 days a year.
Yeah, right.
But
But,
I mean,
still,
only.
just show a vest because
Yeah.
you're talking about, Joe, like how do you raise to the top? How do you have, because here's I think unfortunately the last couple of years I've seen where, because the job market has switched a little bit, right? Where you just have more jobs available than employees available. But I still think you need to have that mindset of what do you do to feel like there's not a lot of, like in your mind, you should think there's not a lot of opportunities. Like this is the job that I want. And what do I do to differentiate myself
Yes.
to go do that? And just taking 10, 15 minutes to do that. I mean, we'll go back to the car washing for a minute. If you're going to sell your car, why wouldn't you spend 5 to 10 minutes to get your car washed
You're going to clean
before
it.
you
You're gonna
sell
wash
it?
Yes.
I mean, why wouldn't you not? That's a huge return on it. Why wouldn't you spend, it's the same thing in an interview. Why wouldn't you prepare yourself? You spend all that time on your clothes and does your hair look good and does everything, but just spend an extra few minutes on the actual interview would be a huge, huge advantage.
Love the analogy.
That's
that in mind.
That's great.
Well, we can kind of take a little bit of a jump maybe and talk about the importance of short-term and long-term goals.
But one of the books that really changed my mindset on this, well, there's actually two, but really the one I'll emphasize today is 13-Week Year. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's a great book. It talks about how sometimes you can have this big audacious goal, like an annual goal, and he compartmentalized, the reason it's 13 weeks is quarters. So he says, hey, what do you need to do in a quarter to make sure, like in a 3 months period, to achieve that big goal? So what he was giving the analogy in that book, and it's really well written, is it says, hey, if you get to the 11th month and you're not doing anything, but you can't make it up, like what do you do? And so what he says is that, hey, you need to have the long-term goal, like to go back to 100, 150 car washes, got it. But what do you need to do for these 1 month, 2 month, 3 month milestones? And what are the alarm bells that take you into, like right now we have a timeline that says, hey, if we have these certain things done by this date, we're on track. But if we go out of track, my job is to alert us to say, hey, wait, time out. We got to focus all our resources here, readjust our overall goal, because those goals matter. Like if you don't hit them, there's financial impacts to them. Like you could hundreds of thousands of dollars of things that would just cost you just a couple different weeks, just more weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you have to really plan out. So that book really allowed me to go back to what Bill said is you have to not only have those long-term goals, which is important, but you really have to compartmentalize those things and kind of in smaller chunks to be able to make sure you're going on the right path.
And I think that's important because, when we think about students and how students think about goals, often we say, think about, they come in and they think in the next 5 years, I want to be a senior manager at this firm, right?
Yep.
And so how do you set those milestones so that you're benchmarking, if I land this job out of college and then 2 years out of college, I'm here, like, how are you actually able to track,
Yep.
are you actually keeping on with those goals?
I love that because it's, people have different plans. I mean, weight loss is always the one because I'm trying to think about this off the top of my head, but like you have a goal of, it's easy to say, like to be healthier, this is less calories and you exercise, right? It's easy to say you can do it, but it's hard to actually make happen because we're such a microwave society that says if we don't see an exact, result right away, we just don't continue. And that's why it takes 21 days to make a habit, all those different pieces, which is really important. So I guess my piece there is also sometimes we think so right now we always think 3-5 years, which is important, but I would also have the grace to give ourselves to be able to just adjust that if need be.
Mm.
And there's sometimes where I thought, like when I first got into college, I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist. That's exactly what I wanted to be. There's nobody else is going to tell me otherwise. I want to be a physical therapist. And then I got into it and I go, not really. I want to do other things. So I think it's able to give us the opportunity to get experiences that can help form you. Because sometimes you think, hey, I want to become a partner of a law firm. But why do you want to do that? Do you want to do that because you like the law? Do you want to do that because you want to make money? Those are two different answers.
Right.
So if you want to make money, you can make money and doing a lot of different things. Maybe that's not the law because this is going to be hard. It's going to be hard to be a partner of a law firm. It's very difficult. So if you love the law, it's going to be probably a lot more attainable to achieve that goal than it is. So you have to understand why you have those goals as well.
See, and when you mentioned the experience, and I was thinking back on your prior discussion, sometimes this is great. I'm thinking how we can rethink for students because so much focus is, I need a degree.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Yeah.
A path, just like you said, law, is it money? Is it the
Yeah.
law? Is it, so same with any of the business, any majors, period. But I'm just thinking, how can we reshape that thinking in a sense? And, a 2-year plan or a 4-year plan may seem like a short-term goal in a sense to get to the longer term. But if they're wanting to become a manager, I mean, that's what a lot of times students are thinking. And so setting these goals, so how do they gain leadership experience? How do they have communication management experience to get to this position? The degree is a part of that process, but it's not the end goal necessarily.
I mean, how many people have you met? I'm sure you guys more than I, but where they get a degree in whatever it is, and it's maybe totally different what they're doing in their career. But their baseline that they've learned is tremendous. Right. I mean, it's tremendous. I mean, the accounting classes that they take, they don't realize this probably right now, but in the future, it will absolutely come about to that. And so I just think those experiences are worth tenfold, whatever the degree is great. Listen, I have a degree, Bill has a degree. It's definitely pro-education. But I also say that just having a degree doesn't give you you're going to have to apply that, no one just mistakenly, I'll go to Bill's analogy. No one just mistakenly goes to Super Bowl. Like you just don't wake up in the morning and go, I go to the Super Bowl because I got the NFL or I made a college team. You just don't do that. You have to have a plan of this. You have to work out. You have to find the right teams. You have to find the right coaches. You have to understand the playbook. I mean, there's all these different pieces that have to fall into place for that to happen. Mm-hmm. So
gotta have the skills. You gotta have the skills.
Yeah.
To me, that's everything. If you want to get to be a manager, how do you get there?
Right.
Yeah.
You have to have the skills. How do you get leadership skills?
Yeah.
Where can you get them? And I always tell people, I've been fortunate for my last 4 or 5 jobs. I've got to choose my boss. And get to a point where you have enough skills that you're valued by other people. And to me, choosing your boss is probably the best thing you can ever do, because that's where you're going to learn the most. That's where you're going to grow the most. If you get the wrong boss, you can have the greatest job on a piece of paper out there. If your boss sucks, it's going to be horrible.
Yeah.
In fact, if you had to choose 2 things, if you had to choose a bad leader but a great job, or a great leader and an okay job, I'd pick the great leader and okay job all day.
You'll get the skills,
because they're going to.
You're not going to last at the other.
No,
you'll get the skills too. A good leader,
and they'll find
a good leader will let their people
for
blossom.
sure.
Yes,
I think about if I could go back to when the dinosaurs roamed the world when I was back in college, but for the idea around if I could just give myself the opportunity just to not freak out about the things that now I don't even remember. I think back then I would worry about if I had the right quality of work, or I'd worry about asking the right questions, or instead of just putting your foot out there and doing it. And there's so many times, 99% of the time you do it and you're fine. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about even our personal lives. We can probably barely remember even last month what we were freaked out about, And so 10, 15, 20 years. So if you tell yourself 20 years, your 20-year-old self, advice, there'd just be so many things that you would tell yourself. And one of them is just be a risk taker. And part of the risk taking is you given this structure, but just have the ability to morph and to adapt and to learn. I mean, what Bill said is right. I mean, we pick sometimes classes, but pick the professor too. It's the same thing in life. I mean, you pick a great, leader that you work with and a mentor, because I know you guys have a great mentorship program too, but Bill, even when he wasn't my leader, he talks about, he has the, the mafia, that I stay with him no matter what happens. Right. But
I generally tell people that work for me that become close to me and where I do have a mentor-mentee relationship, is that working for me is a lifetime commitment.
Yeah,
on both sides.
Yeah, for sure.
I have so many people that work in other companies, other jobs, that constantly call me for advice. Yeah. And to me, I always feel good about that I was able to grow leaders.
That's worth more than any of the jobs that you could ever. That's totally priceless. You can't put a price tag on that.
And that's something we've talked about in other episodes too, but having that mentor-mentee relationship really does require work from, not just the mentor, but the mentee really needs to take a proactive approach in figuring out what it is that they're looking for and seeking what they need from that relationship.
I never sought to be a mentor, but I've had people that have sought me out, and those are the ones where it usually works out the best.
Yeah,
when they're truly committed and serious about it.
Yep. 100%.
We've alluded to this a little bit earlier as we're talking about salary. A lot of times students prioritize high salary. So what are your thoughts on what students should actually prioritize when they're looking for an internship or for a job?
In internship, I look at what am I going to learn? What skills am I going to have? Will those skills that I learn in my internship be marketable to somebody outside of the internship that I've worked at? When I graduate, will somebody say, oh, you're an intern at this and you did this, this, and this? And it's about results. And you want an internship where you can have demonstrable results so that when you're sitting across from a hiring manager, you can say, you don't want to say, I was an intern in marketing. You want to say, I was an intern in marketing, but I was with a startup and we developed this new program that geo-fenced all of our competitors' locations, and we found out who their customers were. And then we went and we attacked those customers. We brought them over to our business. And that increased our business by 75%. If somebody comes to me with like a story like that, I'm hiring before they get out of the room. They'll have an offer before they leave. To me, it's...
Yeah, and I think it's having realistic expectations too, is what you said. I mean, I think sometimes they hear, I know the YouTube, YouTube's awesome, but also I think sometimes gives unrealistic expectations of everyone's a millionaire and everyone drives Bentleys when they're 22 years old. And that's not accurate. That's not the real world. And I do think this is the moment in your life where you can kind of just suck it up for a minute, learn, roll up your sleeves, and maybe take some parts because some of the best things I've learned from has no money involved. Sometimes the best experience is a voluntary experience, to be honest. Because I mean, I've led a group of people that have worked for me, and I've also led a group of people that have volunteered for me. It is a lot tougher to lead a group of volunteers because they can literally walk out at any time.
Yeah.
Right.
So how do I motivate them? So I think the other thing too is to balance the fact of what experiences do you have, and how, to Bill's point, how do you build? I think about the toolbox. Like, what tools are you putting into your toolbox? So whatever job you want to in the future, and be really honest. That's why it's good to have a mentor. Have them be honest with you. Like, what are my gaps? If your gap is finance,
Right.
if your gap is IT or whatever gaps you have, or communication, maybe I'm just petrified of public speaking. Take something you can go public speak at and work with someone that does a good job at it, and then build that up. And then that way you can put that stuff on your resume. So have someone that can really be honest with you on what your strengths are, which is important. Don't discredit your strengths. But what are some of the weaknesses that you really need to work on, and go after that type of experience. The pay will come. I know it's easy to say because people want money right now. I get that. But I promise you, the money will come because they're attracted to people that are successful and how to accomplish those things. The money will come for them.
Yeah. Well, and I think it comes back to your point of you would rather take a okay job with a good leader, right? And to build to your point, because that leader is equipping you to really allow yourself to blossom, to build that toolkit.
And we're not telling people to not get money. Okay. First of all, you should get paid to do
Yes.
work for sure.
I remember Jack Welch, who was CEO of GE.
Right.
That's where I have most of my background. Somebody asked him, so Jack, a reporter somewhere, Jack, how do you motivate people? And Jack goes, you mean other than money? And he was kind of joking, but he was serious.
Right.
The one thing Jack was great at, though, he would, if you got the results, you got paid. But he would write handwritten notes to people. Great job, Jack Welch. And you get something like that, you'd be like, oh my God,
Right.
I can't believe it.
know.
That was like put people on the moon.
But there's just this perception of you can only, if you do good things, you don't need to get paid or get paid very low. So there's a perception in the world, right, in my opinion, and I say especially, if I want to do something passionate, or if I want to do something that really gives back to the community, et cetera, I have to take a low paying job. And that's just not the case. You can have both. It's not linear. You can have both. You can have something that is paying you very competitive rates. You can still give back to the community. You can still do what you want to do. You still have fun,
never
et cetera.
want to be underpaid for what the market pays, though.
Yeah, for
Ever.
sure.
And I will tell people, if you are underpaid and you're underpaid, if you're doing a good job, you better speak up.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're going to continue that same route, getting underpaid.
For sure.
There's two things that come to mind as we're having this discussion about internships, because we put a strong emphasis here at USF, no matter what your major, whether it's required or not, to expose yourself and have these experiences that are important. And just hearing that, knowing you're going to learn and grow, and to keep that momentum, that thought process of growth that we even brought up today. So I guess it comes back. I like that, of course. But because again, sometimes it's get the degree and then get a job, and that's going to be it. I don't always feel like we we're cultivating this culture of growth in the sense of it's always going to be what's next or what else in a sense, taking anyway. And then I was just thinking about when students have a safe place to maybe fail, because it's a little scary. And I was curious with your, when all of a sudden this plan that you lay out doesn't work out.
Contentment is what I keep thinking when you're saying this. Like what's truly, because if you don't find your happy place, or you don't find something that really is your core of who you are, and this is personally or professionally, you're always going to look for the next thing. You're never going to be happy. So let's just use the partnership with the law firm example. I know a lot of people that say, hey, this is the job I want. And when I get that, everything is going to be beautiful and peachy clean and everything great. Unfortunately, that's not the case, because what will happen is they'll get there and they'll go, and so I think it really comes down to the fact that sometimes those goals are important and they're exciting, but really why you're going after those goals. And then what's really your zen? Like what's your happiness point? Some people like to be around people. Some people don't. Some people like the fact of the rat race. Some people don't, some people. So I think it's just having that kind of ebb and flow and understanding that. But I think it's putting right now, a college student just has so much pressure to kind of, because in their brain, they go, okay, I've invested all this time in this education. I'm going to get this degree. So therefore I have to be successful. Well, successful to who? Who's defining that? You get to define it. I get to define it. Bill gets to define it. No one else defines it for me. I define it for me. And so, there's outside influence that sure I could listen to, but you decide in your life who gets the vote, period. So if you feel like people aren't worthy of your vote, you don't have to give it to you, period. They don't have to give you a vote to how you feel.
Back to where you're going, though, the people I've worked with that are not afraid to fail and that fail are usually the ones that become the most successful.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're putting themselves out there. They're trying something. I mean, my first job out of college, I thought I wanted to be working in retail because my dad, my brothers, everybody was in retail. And I went and worked for this small company up in New England called Jordan Marsh. And 30 days in, I'm like, I hate this. I can't stand this. And so I quit. And I never quit anything in my life. And I realized that so many people, what?
I bet that was scary.
Oh, Dad, I want to quit this one. My dad was the guy that raised us, a quitter never wins and a winner never quits.
Right.
One of those kind of guys.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, if you don't like it, you'll be miserable. Don't do it. Mm-hmm. And then, so what was I going to do now? Right? What was I going to do? I guess, I'll go into sales. And I interviewed for sales jobs and nobody would hire me. Why? Well, you don't have any sales experience. And that's a lot of college kids coming out. They don't have any experience. They're in college. So how do you get that experience? Right. And I think internships I didn't have one. I wish I'd had 5 internships.
Me too.
I could have parlayed those into something, not working at a job that I hated.
I think there's just a negative connotation of failure. It shouldn't be. It's a stigma. It's like you're not failing anything. You're learning and learning and learning and learning.
Yes.
So if you're not failing, you're not trying. That's
absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's
no question.
There's this, again, it's a stigma. It's not a failure. I hate that word. It's really not a failure in that case. You're not a failure and you're not failing. Mm-hmm. You're learning and you're trying to absorb into your brain about how to perfect things and do things. I mean, get into an environment that allows you to fail, learn, into how we can endorse that into bigger things. And to me, that's what it's all about.
We've been talking about it throughout this whole episode. We're finally going to come to the question, culture. It's the big buzzword. Yeah. To you, what does culture mean to you, and why is culture important?
Well, I came to General Electric in 1984, and it was a stodgy old company. And then this guy, Jack Welch, I think he'd been in the job as CEO for maybe a year, and he wanted to change the culture. And, this is an organization of 300,000 people that have 100 years of all kinds of culture. And
through generations.
And generations. And the business wasn't doing well. And, Jack came in and realized that he had to change the culture. And he did. And he did it with just by putting himself out there, by leading by example. You talk about failing, in the past, you've made a big mistake at GE, you got fired. Mm-hmm. Well, if you made a big mistake at GE under Jack Welch, depends how big it was, of course, but if you made a big mistake, as long as you don't make it twice, that's kind of a good thing. And, a culture where people are empowered, I think that's what he brought. And to me, a culture of empowerment where people feel safe and comfortable to make decisions, to take things. They don't have to go ask their boss every 5 minutes, can I do this? Can I do that? And they use common sense. You create a culture where people are winning and have fun. I mean, that's a very few companies really set out to create a culture. It just kind of happens. And, when I was at H&R Block, I remember telling the CEO at the time, I said, the culture of this company needs to change. I'm telling the CEO, and he's like, well, that's up to you to change it. And I'm like, man, I came from a company where the one guy changed the entire culture, and this guy didn't get it. He did not get it. And, but really it comes from the leaders. It comes from who the leaders hire, who they hire, and who they hire. And it comes from the processes and things we put in place. And culture can be a competitive advantage in any company. If the culture is good, if it thrives, if it, people can't wait to come into the office and they don't want to go home because they're just excited about what they're doing. They're energized. They're being compensated properly. They feel like everybody's treating them fairly. I mean, culture is everything. It really, and a lot of companies talk about it. Very few actually do the things they do to create a culture where people thrive, where people really can thrive and really, can use their creative skills and come up with innovations. I mean, that's, and I'll go back to, thinking big early on. If you think big things are going to happen. If you think small, same's going to happen.
Yeah. I think to piggyback on that, one, ditto. I mean, he's absolutely right. I mean, culture is it. I mean, it really is. I mean, people use that buzzword a lot, but I mean, you'll know quickly when you interview with somebody, you'll know the culture pretty quick. I ask that
question when I go on interviews. What's the culture like in this company?
Yeah. And you should. I'll
I'll interview 3 different people. I get 3 different answers. Okay, they have a bad culture. They don't even know
ask that
themselves.
question. Like that's a great. We talk about one of the most important parts of the interview. I think is at the end when the interviewee gets to ask questions. And do not miss that opportunity. Ask those questions. Like ask about the culture question, and see what they say. And what's good is ask the same question when you're getting a panel interview, especially. Ask the same question to 2 or 3 different people because you can probably usually get you'll see consistency. The only thing I'll add is, I've looked at a lot of different companies around this, and I think the empowerment is important because the great companies, just like GE, they want to empower people regardless of your title. And so they didn't care what your title was. They didn't care. What they would care about is that what type of influence could you have and how work ethic, et cetera. And so titles were, just anybody could be a leader is what they, so now obviously there's leaders that you have to be accountable for, et cetera. But that was almost a moot point. Steve Jobs used to do that at Apple. Ford actually did a good job. The CEO in the early 2000s or mid 2010 timeframe where they were having just huge losses and the recession really hit them. That's where you really can see what this culture
Steve Jobs created an amazing culture.
Oh, yeah.
Look at the products that they come out with. I mean, I think one of the things he used to say, we like to hire really smart people, and we hire them so they tell us what to do.
And get out of their way.
Rather than us telling them what to do. To me, that was something along those lines.
And stress test it. Like if you look back during COVID, how did they treat employees? Ask them. Say, hey, during COVID, what was your policies and procedures? Do they really care about employees? Did they not? So there's times where you could really, because it's easy to say when things are going great, culture always feels, oh, it's great. What happens if things kind of get stress test? Like what if they have a tough situation? Do they lay everyone off and have to rehire everyone again? Do they, so how do they handle employee safety or what's things that are important to you? I think those are important questions to ask.
Right. The true test of a relationship, whether it's personal or professional, are the challenges and obstacles that you're able to overcome. So,
of course.
And how you do it together.
That's right.
How the team pulls together.
And it's different for everyone, right? So part of it is, I think, you understanding what is your personality, what are your values. So like when you're interviewing a company and you're asking those questions, do you see that mirrored in the company that you're interviewing with?
Right.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And that's when we talk about culture fit. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
We talk about fit, not just you're interviewing for the position, but you're interviewing the company.
Of course. You have options, and I think there's a mix of, confidence and humility too as an intern, right? So you need to kind of be able to be confident in your abilities to get things done, but be humble enough to know that you don't have the answers and ask about it. So you make sure when you walk away, you feel really good because that culture fit. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be doing your literally number one job you could ever dream of doing. And if it's just not a good culture, it literally will destroy you. Culture can
Very true.
thrive. It can destroy either
Very
one.
true.
Thank you.
We have 2 final questions that we like to ask. And
Saving the best. for
Greg,
last.
well, these are easy. Greg kind of hit our first one, so I'm going to punt
Sure.
to Bill and see. But if you would like to change your ad, feel free.
Sure.
But if you could go back in time and give yourself, college self, some advice, what would it be?
If I could give my college self some advice, other than when a company called Google's created, buy their stock.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, if I could give my college self some advice, boy, I would tell you this, and I still struggle with it. I would listen twice as much as I talk, without question. And it took me till my senior year of college. I realized that if I sat in class and really paid attention, like really, really, truly didn't let anything cross my mind, I probably didn't have to study for the test. And it's the same thing in business. And the more you pay attention, the more you listen, the more you're going to learn. And it's always
such
challenging.
a hard skill. That's
Oh,
a hard
my
skill.
goodness.
It is. It's
to
super hard.
really
It's super hard.
grow.
He's right. Like, I mean, going back then.
It's my biggest
yeah.
shortfall.
Yeah, I unfortunately I'm the same way on that. I think it's also talking to folks that have been there before
Mhm.
and sitting down with them and get expectations of it. So we'll go back to that. I'm going to beat a dead horse, but the partners, if I want to be a partner at a law firm, go have lunch with a partner at a law firm
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And
and
we
talk to them about it and just see what you may like, you may not like it, but ask their path. What did they do? Like, and Bill's right. Like, listen to them. Like,
Mhm.
Did you
What-
want to be
you
a
know.
partner in a law firm?
no. She just mentioned it as an example.
I know you were interested in
I know,
law.
I did. I wanted to be Jerry Maguire is what I wanted, like a sports agent.
Mm.
But it's true. Like I would definitely listen more besides investing, but listening, you're right. That's a great one to tell myself, back then it would be that.
So for our listeners, what is the best way for them to connect with the both of you?
if you would like to connect. How can they reach out?
So I think first of all, for internship standpoint, because we
Mhm.
definitely have not just the internships, but we have job stuff. We have an email address, info@AquaSonicCarWash.com. So they can email that, which would be great. Bill and I both have LinkedIn pages that we are very open for folks. Greg Floyd, Bill Burkins, obviously.
You can DM me on my
you know,
LinkedIn. That's
yeah, for
probably
sure. Yeah,
For sure.
it's just
Fantastic.
LinkedIn's a great, I think,
Yeah.
platform to do that. I think once we do that, then we can obviously talk about more communication. But I think that'd probably be the best way to kind of reach us.
Great. Then we'll put that information on our main podcast channel. Thank you both so much.
Well, no, thank you
thank
for
you.
having us.
joining
here.
Yeah.
us. It
Hey,
is
we need interns, and
Yeah.
you guys have them.
honestly
So
been
we're
a
just going to
pleasure.
where the market is.
Yeah, but
And
this
you're
has been
open to
great.
any type of majors. I just want to
Yeah,
for
not
sure.
necessarily. I know
Absolutely.
there's some emphasis with accounting
Yeah.
and finance.
Yeah, early on
Yeah.
where we are
But-
right now, yeah. But
Right.
there's
And again,
we'll
you'll
definitely
hire when you don't even have jobs.
Yeah,
I've
that's
done
right.
that.
That's right. That's right.
I've done
That's
that in
right.
the past.
That's right.
All right.
So-
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to our folks at Innovative Ed. Be sure to follow us on our social media channels at USF Muma and USF Tiedemann.
That concludes another episode of Getting Down to Business, brought to you by the Kate Tiedemann School of Business and Finance in the Muma College of Business. Tune in every month for more career tips and expert industry advice.